Hello, welcome again to Sport Unlocked this week, coming from Munich. Joining me, Rob Harris from Sky News.
Martyn, Ziegler from the Times.
Guten Abend, Tariq, Panja from the New York Times.
Interesting this tournament because we barely discussed anything probably about Germany compared to other hosts of major tournaments in recent years while we've been doing the pod. Is that because we've let Germany off? How will people say in the Gulf be thinking about this when they're hearing us barely mentioning any issues in Germany? Are there issues in Germany that we're overlooking? Some, concern about the rise of the far right?
Well, yes, I mean, the European election results, which I think have record numbers of the votes for the far right Germany AfD party, that has been a bit of focus, but I suppose the Euros is a bit different from the World Cup. It's not as high profile for a start, and I think they aren't. For example, they don't have to build loads of new stadiums, so there aren't that many issues knocking around. I think that's the main difference.
Yeah, but also talking to Rob about whether we are looking at Germany and Qatar differently, I think we have to go back a bit. When that bid, the most controversial sporting bid in history, perhaps, all of those people seem to be implicated in wrongdoing that selected Qatar, and from that, the human rights record, the worker deaths, it's a different playing field. But one thing I'm very much looking forward to, this is the first Euro that we can enjoy without COVID restrictions since France in 2016. So it's a long time coming for a major tournament in Europe.
For many, they see a tournament as a distraction from the transfer window. But I need to admonish you. The one thing you often say, I think surely on this pod, both of you, is we don't do transfer stories. We don't get involved in any of that because we're all about sportsies and FIFA. Martyn, how come you broke a transfer story this week? Everyone wants a bit of the Manchester United SEO and clicks, don't they?
Yes. Well, it was a very old contact provided me with the news that Manchester United agreed personal terms with Jared Branthwaite. Not the sort of thing I do before, but I think the last transfer story I did was another central defender going to Manchester United.
1990s was this?
Almost, Rio Ferdinand. So, yeah, I mean, how long ago was that? 2001, 2000, yeah, I think it was. So, yes, 23 years on, I've done another one. But it's not me. Tariq, you've been dabbling in the transfer world.
I have, but before that, Martyn, did you have a chance to remind Rio Ferdinand of your transfer exclusive? I saw him walk past you at the UEFA hotel yesterday.
Yeah, I didn't mention that to him. I think he's blissfully unaware of it. But yes, I just happened to, back in the days, was speaking to somebody at Leeds United who just confirmed that they'd accepted an improved offer from Manchester United, and I did a story on the Press Association Wire back in the day.
My nothing is as big, as dramatic as mentioning any player moving to Manchester United, and Rob's right, those clicks, they really come, Martyn. I've never seen a story get that much attention so quickly. Certainly not a sports business or a governance story.
Probably not since covering Salt Bay.
Yeah, probably not since Salt Bay. But from my side, it was more to do with what we normally do, the governance. I was looking into multi-club ownership and the UEFA's talks with Manchester City, Manchester City's owners and Manchester United's owners. Of course, United are linked to Nice, and City, interestingly, with Girona. And what I seem to have eked out is this transfer that was announced by the social media influencer Fabrizio Romano way back in February, deal done, and all the like, bells and whistles. It seems if Girona and Manchester City both want to play in the Champions League, the player Savio that was announced, the winger who announced himself in La Liga last season, helping Girona into the Champions League, won't, according to the rules at least, be able to join Manchester City this summer.
Got to say, is this where, particularly we could differentiate with some of those who might just do the pure transfer lines, that you sort of dig beneath the complexity of it and why it might not happen, and, aspects of multi-club ownership and questionable parts of the process that are around?
Yeah, it's also interesting that, Rob, because it also gives us a chance to explain multi-club ownership to an audience that's probably only interested in transfers.
Is it right that the whole, the news of the Savio thing was one of the things which I think UEFA's Club Financial Control Board was looking at quite closely and thought was perhaps that would be a step too far in terms of the sort of relationships between the clubs?
Yeah, absolutely. Transferring players between competing clubs in that same season they're going to play in the competition. That the sporting tensions there are the ones that they're looking at closely, almost more so than the financial ones, because you have to ensure that the competition's fair. And it's not only player transfers in that sense, also loans between these teams are not going to be allowed. And a trick of even perhaps moving a player from, say, one club to a second intermediary club for a couple of weeks and then to the ultimate destination, that's also probably going to be outlawed.
So ultimately, will they be thwarted from doing this transfer, do you reckon?
Well, as the rules are, and from what people I've been speaking to, they're adamant that this shouldn't happen. But they have been in talks with these clubs for weeks, if not months, over this stuff. And, we've seen Manchester City, they often don't take things lying down when it's something that's in their interest. We've seen it with the Premier League recently, with UEFA in the past. So let's see.
I was just about to say, another legal challenge on the horizon, because there seems to be a lot of those.
Yeah, there are. One intriguing to get to in a moment. If you're wondering why there's a lot of noise, of course, we are recording actually from the UEFA hotel. But there's a big crowd outside. Do you know what the crowd are here for?
No, but I did notice it was building up.
It's not seemingly for UEFA, all of it. You're glancing out the main square, Tariq, just outside the hotel. What are you noticing?
There is a shrine to Michael Jackson just behind us. Is it that right?
It is. He used to stay here when he came to Munich. So there are legions of Michael Jackson fans that gather here and pay homage to him.
Well, yes, I did put a picture of it on Instagram yesterday. So it is a strange one for sure.
Well, will the message from FIFA to FIFA be beat it?
Rob, that is brilliant.
This is the legal action launched by part of the World's Players Union against FIFA over the Club World Cup. There's been a threat for some time over this.
Well, the players, they just want to control their own feet and their own destiny. Martyn, this case with something we've talked about. Where is it now? What have we seen in this last week?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be a bit of a thriller. Anyway, that's enough puns. So this is action brought by the English and French player unions in Belgium. And it's basically challenging FIFA's right to hold competitions without sort of the agreement of the players. And also, I think separately, insisting that players should have a right to have a fixed period of holiday.
This all over the expansion of the Club World Cup from that annual event of 7 teams into a big 32-team extravaganza every 4 years, something FIFA have been pushing for many years. It's going to feature 12 European teams. There was originally European opposition to it completely. Then the European Club Association came on board because they get to sell the commercial rights. But who's unhappy? It's the leagues and the Players' Union. Before we get into it, I would say, since this action was launched only by a part of FIFPro's European division, I've not seen any players sharing news of this. You think this is a pretty landmark moment. You've got the players suing FIFA, but the players don't seem to be commenting themselves on it.
Yeah, it's strange. It's weird that our players who are currently in the game, they're not particularly activist about any of this. They play the games. I've had comments from Rodri, who was at Manchester City. He said he needed some time off. There's too many games, but there hasn't been that collective moment. And after they launched this legal case, as you know, we've seen tumbleweed. This would have been the moment, wouldn't it? A case is launched. The player's going to come. And in terms of the case, so this is in the Belgium court, but where it's supposed to end up is in the European Court of Justice. That's where FIFPro and these unions want it to go. Why is that? Because they saw with the Super League case, which was a really, really important case, that criticised the potential monopoly over groups like FIFA and UEFA, over control of competitions in that case. This is over when football can be played. And you could argue, after seeing Super League, they've got a good chance.
I mean, I know the people behind the Super League are watching this very carefully, and they're watching the legal challenge by Manchester City against the Premier League over associated party transactions, because I think they feel there's this sort of groundswell of legal challenges against the game's authorities, which could perhaps remove some of the rules that prohibit the Super League being set up. So I think it's something that's going to be quite interesting. But your point, Rob, about the players not getting involved, I think there are a few, like Varane, for example, he's spoken out about it, but generally they tend to avoid this. But Carlo Ancelotti briefly seemed to be opposing it, but only very briefly.
And it was in very specific terms, an interview in an Italian paper talking about the finances not being worth it for Real Madrid to get involved, which created a few hours of headlines once these quotes were spotted. I must say, intriguingly, that morning had begun with Gianni Infantino's Insta account wishing happy birthday to Ancelotti.
I didn't spot that one. That's very funny.
And then a few hours later, statements completely backtracking it, saying they are committed. No, what did he say? Was it misinterpreted, his words? It was pretty detailed to be misinterpreted.
Yeah, I wonder if he asked for his, Infantino asked for his present back as well after he's seen Ancelotti's comments. And yeah, this is the issue. It was an interview in Italian, which is Ancelotti's native tongue, with the newspaper Il Giornale, in which it wasn't player fatigue or any of these issues we've talked about, not too much football, not enough money was the issue. Carlo Ancelotti suggested in the interview that Real Madrid's games are international games worth 20 million apiece, so it's peanuts for them. But very quickly, Real Madrid issued a statement saying precisely the opposite. They're determined to go and play in the Club World Cup next year, the expanded one in 2025 in the US. And then Carlo Ancelotti released his own statement saying he too is backing that tournament. So yeah, very confusing.
I mean, you can see the Real Madrid president, Florentino Perez, perhaps wouldn't be too happy with that being made public, because he'd held talks, I think, with Infantino in the sort of build-up to the whole Super League launch. And the Super League was committed to the Club World Cup as well, I think. So, but Ancelotti is saying that Real Madrid get paid 20 million euros a match. I mean, actually, if you look at the Champions League, that is basically what they get paid for getting to the final, just under 20 million euros a match. So if that is going to be the total that they're going to get for 7 matches in the Club World Cup, then yes, you can see that's why they might be pushing hard for more.
But as it relates to issues we've discussed previously, that balance of how you weight the prize money so you don't give a huge amount to a team from a smaller league that would then give them an inherent huge advantage for many years to come domestically and destabilise the competitiveness of that competition, say in New Zealand or Tunisia or Austria. But on this itself, one of FIFA's points is they're claiming they have consulted. So they're quite specific on this to say that we have listened to the views of the players' unions. The complaint from the players' unions is they didn't consult them. Could FIFA have mounted a better strategy to do this, or did they want to find the easiest path to getting agreement, which of course was ultimately the European members on the council?
Yeah, but the European members of the council aren't playing in the games, are they? And yeah, you said this is the easiest path, but it now looks like the most difficult path. We've got legal action. We're anticipating the leagues as well, launching separate legal actions. And just one thing on the relationship between Infantino and the Super League. We wrote a story around the time that I think the headline at the time was the Super League thought it had a secret silent partner, which was Infantino, something that Javier Tebas, the La Liga president, also suspects.
Should players be consulted? They are the key participants that are needed in the game. Should there be FIFA representation on the FIFA Council, the UEFA Executive Committee, all the Confederation Executive Committees? Should there be current players? I mean, the IOC has the Athlete Commission that is part of the decision-making process. Are players being unfairly shut out of this?
I think there's certainly a place for players' unions, the international players' unions, to have more of a voice. And I think if both Infantino and UEFA President Alexander Shefrin, that they will say that they believe that as well, I'm sure. but it doesn't really happen in practice. The whole issue of legal challenges I think is going to dominate the next few months, and there's another one that's like raised its head as a potentially, which is the owner of Aston Villa saying that he may now take the Premier League to a arbitration tribunal over the financial rules.
Yeah, this is the billionaire Nassef Sawiris who talked to the Financial Times recently to suggest that, funny enough, we mentioned last week that he's moved his holdings to Abu Dhabi, where another club that is suing the Premier League, Manchester City, is also from. But yeah, back to FIFA. What does the governing body do here? And Rob's question about the structure, is it fit for purpose? You know, we're talking about clubs, players, leagues. These are vast enterprises. They have a lot of impact. The FIFA's decisions have a lot of impact on what they do. But should they have a say? Should they be in the room?
Well, we often say without referees there would be no football. Without players, there's no football. Yet, I would see there is quite a divide between the players. There are those at the very top of the game earning a lot, but can still be exhausted. You still endanger their health by subjecting them to a lot of games. You could have those at the other end of the game who aren't earning as much and would readily take any of these competitions. But maybe that's when also you need governance intervention to put health checks in place to ensure they don't play too many matches, and that's damaging for their physical and mental health too.
Because there's so many different competition organisers, they all want more and more and more, don't they? So that's why basically the players, because they want to earn the money, they have to go along with it. But you could say that those organisers aren't thinking of them. And just to say, my final thing on this is, if people think this is just a legal challenge and it's not that important, I actually think it's probably the most important legal case for FIFA since the whole transfer system was overhauled after the Bosman ruling. And the guy who won the Bosman ruling, Jean-Louis Dupont, is representing the players' unions.
To be fair, it seems like he's the only one who does any of these cases. Like these clubs and leagues who want to sue FIFA don't have more than one name in the book, but he did win the Bosman case. Rob, when we go to these hotels and these events, whether it's FIFA or UEFA, we see some of the best former players in the world. Like, you know, you look here, we saw Rio Ferdinand, we just mentioned, and at FIFA events, you see who's who. The other day at the Champions League final, I saw Cafu, who is omnipresent, a big football event, whether it's UEFA event, FIFA event, he's there. And on this thing about players being overplayed, all these legends of the game, I asked Cafu actually, I said, do you think these players are playing too much? And he said no. And you think, where are they going to get the support from? If these people have been co-opted inside FIFA, inside UEFA, they're never going to criticise them now. Now they're inside the club, are they?
Yeah, I mean, they do get a nice lifestyle. They get to be sort of kept involved with the game in that way by being part of the legend system, which is interesting. And we are a year out from when this Club World Cup should be played. We've had no details of the venues, no commercial deals, no TV rights yet. So you could say it's a sign of the challenges they're facing. Also, perhaps it's easy to cancel an event if there aren't any commercial deals. If you, as the players' union, show you're not going to lose out because you don't actually have anything in place.
Lots of things to be sorted out by FIFA for this.
Obviously interesting if FIFA starts to really mount the case, really for the positives of this tournament. Of course, it replaces the old Confederations Cup slot that didn't really have much attention, the old Club World Cup, the annual one, which now becomes the Intercontinental Cup. It's very hard to always start something fresh off the ground. You can imagine in many years to come, some might say it's not good for football, having a big global club competition. Although you get the oddities, particularly with Chelsea in it, and all their changes, that by the time they're in it in the US, there'll be no one left virtually from the team that actually secured qualification by winning the Champions League in 2021, unless they've got Thomas Tuchel back, perhaps by then, as managing.
Yeah, it's a strange anomaly. I mean, I think it's going to be very interesting to see what the sort of TV interest is in this new tournament, because you can see there might be some, but I think it's going to be a hard sell. Tariq and I were speaking to a TV executive earlier on today who thought they were really going to struggle to attract interest.
Yeah, Rob mentioned it's a grower, isn't it? Who knows, 10, 15, 20 years' time, this thing could become quite big and valuable, and we'll see. But Rob, this There's been more news on something we talked about in the past. We had an update, Rob, on Vinicius Jr. and racism in Spain.
There has someone that the FIFA president, Gianni Infantino, went to see about a year ago after he faced that racist abuse repeatedly at Valencia. Now we've had 3 Valencia fans prosecuted, handed 8-month sentences in the first case of a successful prosecution of racist abuse in a Spanish stadium launched by La Liga, Real Madrid and Vinicius. Now, generally in Spain, no one who's handed a sentence under 2 years serves that as jail time, unless there are repeated offences. But it is a landmark moment because we have talked in the past about perhaps a lack of rigour in Spain's determination to clamp down on racism. In some cases in the past, outright denial of there being a problem.
Yeah, completely. I think it is a big moment, actually, and perhaps a sign that Spanish football is finally taking it seriously. And I think there have been some reports in Brazil that actually Spanish football's authorities have been put on the spot about this by people in Brazil.
Yeah, there's a really interesting story by Martyn Fernandes, who is at Globo in Brazil and covers FIFA and international issues. He published a story saying he's in possession of documents showing that Brazilian diplomats pressured Spain repeatedly over taking action here. He said diplomats there have suggested changes of law, offered help and demanded solutions from Spanish politicians, authorities and sports leaders. And he name-checked meetings between the Brazilian ambassador to Spain, Orlando Leite Ribeiro, and people like Florentino Perez, the president of Real Madrid, Javier Tebas, the president of La Liga, and Luis Rubiales, the former president of the Spanish FA, to do things. In the meetings, they were suggesting that Spain did not have a coherent plan in place. Maybe now these men have been charged, we might see a different approach over there.
And it does reflect what FIFA are pushing for. They say they want every country around the world to criminalise racist abuse in stadiums. Of course, Spain, one of the 6 countries hosting games at the 2030 World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a new FIFA anti-discrimination committee. I think maybe perhaps this can be an important moment in that.
That's the 2030 World Cup, and of course we completely anticipate who the 2034 World Cup host will be: Saudi Arabia.
Really? I thought we're still in the bidding process.
There is a bidding process, but there's only one bidder.
And football not their only target to be centre stage in the world of sport, because how many fights are we seeing in Saudi Arabia? A lot. No coherent, perhaps, narrative linking all these fights, apart from them being this part of Riyadh season, which is never ending. But big plans emerging to unite all the disparate elements of boxing into one big super competition under the Saudi umbrella. It's pretty hard to bring all the boxing promoters together, isn't it? How is it being done, Tariq?
Well, the one way and the one thing Saudi has vast amounts of to get things done is a load of money. It's going to be done with money. And if you think about it, Rob, all those disparate groups, there's been this decades-long incoherence with boxing. So many different world champions in each weight category, the best have often not fighting the best. So what we're going to see now is a Saudi-backed league series, a bit like the Ultimate Fighting Championship. About $2 billion is being invested. The best will fight the best. And it's being funded, if it goes ahead, by the Public Investment Fund. No surprise there. They are backing all of the sports. And the man at the centre of this is a guy called Turki Al-Sheikh, the chairman of the General Entertainment Council of Saudi Arabia. We mentioned Turkey in the past. And I think a few weeks ago on the pod, we said all these promoters, all these TV companies, they seem to be name-checking Turkey so desperately. Now I guess we know why. This man could control international boxing. And to be fair, I think this plan has legs, and it's probably good for the fans that the best fight the best.
Is the idea that these fights will take place around the world? So they're not just going to be fighting in Riyadh or Jeddah or whatever?
Yeah, it's a really good point. No, they will be around the world. And we're already going to see a bit of this. I understand that if this goes ahead, the promotions company behind it will be Seller, another entertainment entity owned by the Public Investment Fund. And this summer, Seller is already going to broaden its wings outside of Saudi with boxing. We're going to see Terence Crawford's super welterweight championship fight in Los Angeles in August. And most probably, Anthony Joshua's return to the ring in Wembley Stadium in September will also be a Seller production.
Is this why they can perhaps justify there is a value on their Newcastle shirt sponsorship? They're involved in so much because, in terms of visibility with fans, it's not something as a product they can engage in themselves, is it, and pay for?
Well, exactly. I think if you hadn't heard about them before, then it sounds like we're going to be hearing a lot of people will know the name of Seller in the future.
Yeah, of course, this is all private deals in the world of boxing. There's no exactly open bidding process to put it out to tender. In fact, with the Live Golf PGA Tour partnership, they have been talking to other investment funds. But the question is, how much is this necessary? Does it help to have an open process? Is it fairer that there are bidding contests for things to give everyone a say? Well, we used to see them in the Olympic world, the big reveal of the envelope, who's going to host the Olympics. But repeatedly, that's no longer the case. We've got a new announcement in that world this week. So a bit like, the 2032 Olympics were handed to Brisbane for the Summer Games with a behind-the-scenes deal. Now the Winter Games, we've got an announcement from there.
Yeah, there was a recommendation from the International Olympic Committee's executive board that the 2030 Winter Olympics will go to the French Alps and 2034 to Salt Lake City. And that is a significant place for the Olympic movement.
Perhaps it's better there is no bidding contest, no votes need to be secured.
That's right. It was the bid for the Salt Lake City Games in 2002, which actually blew the lid off the sort of vote buying that had gone on in with the Olympics before then. And actually, it continued to an extent afterwards. But Salt Lake City was seen as the sort of way it all blew up, and that when the reform process was brought in.
Yes, Salt Lake City was a disaster for the IOC, but let's remember that the Rio 2016 Games, the Tokyo 2020 Games, all of those under criminal investigation and also convictions related to those.
Yeah, you've got to look at this from the IOC's perspective. Winter Games, is there that much interest in hosting them? We have often referendums, don't we, in certain cities in Europe where once it's put to the public, they don't think it's worth it, and the IOC could be struggling, let alone the talk of climate change impacting where can be viable venues for Winter Games. So isn't it logical that the IOC tries to do their best to protect itself just to find anyone who will want it?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there, Rob. I think actually it was the previous struggles to find meaningful bidding contests for the Winter Olympics that actually hastened this process, where instead of actually having 2 or 3 cities bidding and spending a lot of money in those bids, that actually the IOC decided they will take this route where they will identify the best people, and that's what's happened now.
And amidst all this, another global event, the Commonwealth Games, still doesn't have a host for 2026. Duncan Mackay, formerly the editor of Inside the Games, often posts on social updating how many days it is since they said there'd be an announcement. I think they had originally said by May there'd be something, but the website seems to be completely blank of any news on that. And the question is, the viability of the Commonwealth Games, does it have a future? One we've discussed.
I think a blank website sums up the interest and appetite in the Commonwealth Games, Rob.
Yeah, not something that is attracting that much interest, unlike this European Championship getting underway, a month of football. Of course, we've got Copa America as well in the US. Great to be chatting here, and thank you everyone for listening as ever. If you want to send your thoughts and questions very anonymously, sportonlockpod@gmail.com, the email address, or just contact us on our individual social accounts. For now, thank you for listening. Goodbye.